Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Joshua Ness. I'm a senior manager of Verizon 5G Labs, and this is the technology webinar, connectivity and technology webinar as part of the design sprint for the Clinton Global Initiative University and Verizon Social Innovation Challenge. That's exciting. We got a lot of really great stuff to cover today, so I'm going to get started. And if you, yeah, go ahead and check out, open up the chat, and you can see there that if you have any questions, you can pop them into the chat. I'll try to answer them in real time and answer them as we go. And hopefully we'll talk about some good stuff here today. So I'm going to share the screen up here, and then I'm also going to keep that chat window open. So please do feel free to pop your questions in there. This is sort of an interactive presentation, so please do feel free to use the chat window. If I say something interesting that you think is pretty cool, and you want to tell me that you thought it was cool, then go ahead and do that. I do have a couple of areas where I do ask for responses there in the chat window. So this is going to be a little bit kind of a fun presentation, and we're going to go through a little bit of history and talk about technology maybe in a way that you haven't thought of before. So here's me. Yeah, we're talking about leading edge technologies for a connected future. And so a lot of people ask me what I do at Verizon. And Verizon 5G Labs, we're really excited to be partnering with the Clinton Foundation on this because they're interested in some of the same things we are. And that in some cases is predicting the future, right? My job quite literally at Verizon is to predict the future, which is a pretty cool job to have. And the reason is because connectivity and advances in hardware have continued to shape the future and to bring about new advances in applications and services, and really has shaped the way that we live our lives. And so right now we're coming up on 5G, right? And if you've heard anything about 5G, you've seen it on TV. You've probably read a few things about it. Some of which may be true, some of which maybe not. And we're pretty excited about that because Verizon is a technology company. I'm sorry, we're a technology and a connectivity company. And so there's a good bet that most of the solutions that you're going to be thinking of as you prepare for this program are going to be connected solutions. They're going to be types of technology that bring people together in new and creative ways. And 5G is going to have a really big hand in that. And so here you can see how technology and how connectivity and wireless connectivity has evolved over the years. We started off with that on the left there, 1G, that's that big brick phone. You remember that? I call it the Zach Morris phone. If you know why it's called the Zach Morris phone, please put that in the chat. Let me know. I'm always curious to see how well that show ages. But that was the very beginnings of cellular connectivity there. And that phone that you're looking at, you could use it for about 30 minutes, and then it took about 10 hours to charge. That's no joke. It was kind of a clunky user experience. No texting, no nothing, just phone calling. And then you can see how we progressed through the years to get where we are today with texting, and then with data, with email and calendar on the BlackBerry on 3G, and then throughout the rise of the smartphone era in 4G. And back in 1 and 2 and 3G, there was never anybody talking about how it was these new successive generations. It's all of a sudden there was just new stuff that your phone could do, which was pretty cool. And now it almost seems like it's flipped a little bit, and people are talking about how 5G is great, but no one's actually really telling you what you can do with it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And in order to understand why it's important, it's really important to understand what this gentleman here, what he did in 2007. If you know who this is, go ahead and put that in the chat. He stood up on a stage in Cupertino, California, and he held up that device right there, and he said that it's a brand new invention. It's an iPod. It is an iPod that you can make phone calls with. And everyone thought that was crazy. Everyone thought that was the bee's knees. Yep. Nintendo, you got it. Steve Jobs. Daniel, good job there. Yep, Steve Jobs. He really went a long way in creating the way that we live our life right now, and a lot of people don't really give him credit for that. But He and his company Apple, they introduced the iPhone in 2007, and it was a supercomputer that fit in your pocket. Jen, you got the Saved by the Bell reference. I really appreciate that. For most people, that was their first introduction to what a cell phone looked like. And so this little piece of hardware that played music and made phone calls, it was crazy how powerful the thing actually was. It had more computing power than the Apollo 11 spaceships that went to the moon. That's not a joke. That's real. And so it was super advanced for its time. And it was living on the 3G network. And if you remember from the last slide, 3G was only the beginnings of data, right? Email, calendar, you could take a grainy selfie and send it to somebody, that's pretty much it. And so this device here, it held the promise for so much more that we could do with hardware, with personal hardware. But while it was still on that 3G network, the functionality of the phone was still kind of limited because there weren't many applications that were being created that could really do much while it was still on that 3G network. So much so that after 3 years of existence, this right here was the most advanced application that was on the iPhone. If you know what this application is, go ahead and put that in the chat. It's essentially a Scrabble that you can play with people in all over the world. If you still played this, you know the screen very well. This is Words with Friends. And there we go, Jen got that one too. And so Words with Friends was super popular, and you could play Scrabble with different people all over the world. You could chat with them, and that was pretty revolutionary for the time in 2010. That's only 10 years ago. And so this is what we had until 4G was released. And with 4G came with it what people thought was going to be the quote unquote killer app was going to be streaming video. And we all know that right now we got so much more than streaming video. We got all of the different ways that we live our lives right now. I'm sure some of you are even on this Zoom right now connected to cellular connectivity. And if 10 years ago, someone had told you that you'd be able to use your phone to dial into a video-based webinar with, how many people do we have? Like 50 or 60 or 70 people, that would have been crazy. And you can see all the different things that they're doing with their devices. They're watching videos, they're listening to music, they're texting, they're checking out real-time information like weather and things like that, right? And that's just a taste of what we can do with our devices right now. And so now that 5G and advanced connectivity is here, it's time to start thinking more broadly about what connectivity is going to mean for technology. And so this is a good way that this slide is. I have mixed feelings about it. One is that it's good because it actually illustrates how much faster 5G is and what sort of advanced connectivity, what value is going to bring. The downside of it is putting it in context of downloading a movie to your phone. When's the last time any of you downloaded a movie to your phone? We don't really do that. We do it if we think we're going to have no connectivity whatsoever, like getting on an airplane. But apart from that, we stream everything. And so if this is 5G's impact on downloading, what is 5G's impact on real-time information going to be? Well, that's something that I think is going to lead us into what we're calling this fourth industrial revolution. And every new a significant advancement in hardware and connectivity in ways that connect people have brought about these industrial revolutions. And so this is a term that gets used in places like the World Economic Forum and Davos, this idea of a fourth industrial revolution where it uses IoT, or the Internet of Things, that connects everything and everyone for a variety of purposes and ways. And so with advanced connectivity, we know that it's going to bring with it a lot of new use cases. A use case is something that can be done with the technology that couldn't be done before, right? And so I think a lot of your submissions and a lot of your ideas will be new use cases of technology, new applications of sometimes existing technology, as well as applications of emerging technology as we think about how to scale your ideas. And so two of my favorites here, there's a lot on this slide. You can see everything from drones and connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, real-time face and language detection using computer vision. But on the left there, you have IoT sensors, and IoT sensors are essentially the connected light bulbs that you have in your lamps, the Ring, the connected doorbell that has a camera on it that you can stream to your phone. If any of you have pet cameras that you can open up the app on your phone and see how your pets are doing at home, that's an IoT device. It's connected to the internet, and then it gives you that information via that connection. And so right now, it's simple things like video, non-contextual video, right? The video of your dog or your cat, that doesn't tell you anything except for what they're doing. It's not giving you any new information, as opposed to like, here is the current state of this pet. Right, but as IoT becomes more advanced, using connectivity advancements like 5G, it's going to be able to give us much more contextual information, right? And these connected wearables that you see there, that's really talking about things like connected watches or connected earbuds, things that make up an ecosystem of user interfaces for your person that are not necessarily connected to a phone as a hub device, right? They would be connected into the network itself. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. The new the new Apple Watch has a cellular connectivity option, so it can be connected directly into the network. And we're going to start seeing more wearables, more of these connected personal IoT devices that connect into the network and provide a much more immersive experience than just the phone does. And so one of the things that I want to challenge you to do is to think beyond the bounds of what's possible now, to start thinking a little more forward about where technology is going to go and how it's going to start building on itself. And this is one of my favorite shows from back in the day. This is Star Trek. It's my man Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy. If you're also a Star Trek fan, throw that in the chat. Please let me know I'm not alone. You can see him. He's writing on a tablet right there. And that was pretty advanced thinking for the time, like, whoa, a wireless tablet. But what's actually on that tablet, if you ever saw, are dials and switches and meters and things like that, which was how we consumed information in the 60s. And so the team at Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry and folk, they were thinking ahead about having a wireless tablet, but they couldn't quite wrap their heads around how we would be processing the information that was on that tablet at the time. And so it happens to almost every generation. When we were trying to think about how technology is going to advance, we need to understand that those technology advancements will build on themselves. And so I want you to make sure that you keep thinking about that as you're thinking about your submissions. So connectivity is going to be changing, and 5G, right, is going to be leading that charge. The way that we think about connectivity is changing. Right now, if you're on a Wi-Fi connection, or if you're on a computer that's plugged into to a network connection, you're probably taking advantage of a cable or of fiber optics. And that means that there's a physical cable that runs to your home or the building that you're in, that provides that network capability, that connection capability. And the thing is, upgrading those, because a lot of them are pretty old and they don't have a ton of capacity, upgrading those can get pretty darn expensive, and it's not scalable. And thinking about the scale of things is something that you're going to have to keep in mind as you're creating your submissions. And so one of the ways that 5G is going to revolutionize connectivity is it's going to provide something called fixed wireless access. And that's the idea that we can take a 5G multi-gigabit connection and we can just beam it into homes and businesses, right? Into structures, into physical structures, which can then manifest itself as something like a Wi-Fi 6 signal. And it can provide multi-gigabit wireless connectivity at scale fairly cheaply, right? And so this is one way that, that 5G is going to transform the way that we think about connectivity in the home. And if you've been on lockdown like me and like everybody else, then this scene might be fairly familiar to you. A lot of people doing a lot of different things, all trying to use the same Wi-Fi, and it ends up dragging everything down, and it can be super frustrating. And for a lot of folks, they're already at the tippy top of the level of connectivity they can have, and that's due in large part to the infrastructure that is in those buildings. The cables simply don't have the capacity to provide the type of network access and connectivity access that these families are needing. Well, 5G Home solves that problem by just beaming in successively more capacity into a home or a business. And then, of course, there's the way that we think about it traditionally, which is 5G on your devices, right? And the question is, what are we going to be able to do with 5G on our devices? Well, we know that content is changing, and pretty soon we're going to be able to do streaming content creation on our devices. And this is an example of the traditional way of creating content, but we know that that's already changing, and that's moving into an arena where real-time motion capture and volumetric capture are used to create real-time dynamic engagement-driven 2D assets like you're seeing here, right? This is meant to be consumed on a screen in 2 dimensions. Moving beyond that, we're going to start seeing it in 3 dimensions as we start really exploring the bounds of augmented reality and virtual reality. So a few more things that we'll be able to do with our devices on a 5G connection. I talked about that volumetric capture on the left-hand side there. You have the greatest basketball player who ever lived. I stand by it. LeBron's got nothing on Jordan. And the ability to take an asset, whether that's a person or a thing, and create a 3D representation of it that you can then put in your living room, and you can view and engage with that content on your device in real time as it's streaming. In the middle there, it's this idea of a digital world that you can enter, almost like Doctor Strange. You'll be able to open up a portal and then walk into an entirely new world that's based on augmented reality, and we call this mixed reality. And then on the right there, you have these dynamic avatars that move and engage with you. So the idea that these will be streamable is something that's not really possible now. What we see with things like Instagram and Snapchat, those are pre-downloaded assets. That's why those applications are so big when they're on your device. But we'll be able to stream those and be able to make changes to them on the fly here very soon with technology like 5G. We'll also be able to use it to tell interesting stories and provide new education experiences, right? And so this is the Stonewall Inn riots that took place in New York City. The idea here that you can use your device to enter into that space and see and hear. What you're not getting here is the audio that complements this spatial experience. And so the ability to create multi-layered experiences using visual and audio immersive experiences is going to be something that really takes advantage of 5G and really helps showcase its value. And then moving a few years beyond that, there's the idea that you might be walking through the park, realize that you're missing a Champions League game, and put on some eyewear that puts you in a virtual reality so that you are there on the field. And that's using a combination of things like 360 cameras and contextual engagement algorithms that allow you to be right there on the field as these games are being played. And we're already starting to see some elements of this in the music world and the live entertainment world. With concerts, we can put some of these cameras at a concert so that a person who's not physically there will be able to have that same type of a concert experience, or even sometimes an enhanced concert experience. This is going to become important, and I want to make sure that you are thinking about this. It's going to become important because we're going to move, as we come out of these lockdowns, we're going to move into a hybrid model where there's going to be some people who can and feel comfortable being in person, and there are others who don't. And for those who don't, we're going to need to make sure that they continue to have access to the types of experiences and the types of care and the types of value that the same folks are getting as who are there in person, whether that is education or healthcare related or entertainment related. And so make sure that you're keeping that in mind, that we are moving in this hybrid direction where it's no longer going to be acceptable to have an in-person experience without having some sort of digital component for the people who can't or don't feel comfortable being there. And so those are some consumer types of use cases, and we're also doing things on the enterprise side, on the business side, on the back end, right? How do we keep the world running through things like hospitals and stores and in manufacturing and schools, right? And so one of the things that's going to really take advantage of 5G is something called multi-access edge computing, or sometimes just referred to as edge or sometimes MEC, right? And it's the idea, and I'm not going to go too deep into this. We could spend a lot of time on this, and I highly recommend looking this up and researching it yourself. The idea is that we can use 5G to bring the cloud closer to the users, and in doing so, drastically decrease the latency so that we can begin to have real-time applications that engage with the users without having to have hardware that is big and clunky and requires all of this computing power the same way our phones do today. And so that might mean that hardware starts to change, and we go from our traditional phone, which in some cases can be very big, and we start moving to some of those wearables, like I talked about, having an ecosystem of glasses and earbuds and maybe haptics in our clothing and other parts of us, that all together gives us new types of experiences that take advantage of things like edge computing here. So if you haven't heard of this before, definitely look it up. It's a really exciting technology that we're just starting to deploy now. And it's going to be really interesting to see how developers and people like you come up with new ideas on how to use it. And so we're already using this in things like factory operations. And this is just to give you some ideas about how 5G combined with edge computing can allow, like we see there on the robot patrol section, that's a person using VR who is remotely controlling a forklift. Right, that's kind of crazy to think about. And then the same thing, you have a drone that isn't following a predetermined flight path like most drones have to do now. It's actually moving around based on the things that are in its environment, which is pretty cool. We also know that it's going to have an impact on things like on manufacturing and supply chain, right? Quality assurance. These things are going to start to become more automated and therefore much more easily scalable. That's something that you're going to have to keep in mind, is how can your idea move from, or how can it grow from impacting just a small group of people to impacting larger groups of people. Brima Follett, yes, we'll make sure that you get these slides, no problem. And so the same is true for healthcare. We know that telehealth is becoming a thing, as well as doctors needing to be able to be more scalable themselves in offices and hospitals. And so we are starting to see 5G coming into play in things like telehealth. Verizon bought a company called BlueJeans, which is a HIPAA compliant telehealth platform, which is a safe way for doctors and patients to speak to each other and to consult with each other, right? And so this allows, I keep coming back to this idea of scale. That second bullet there is really talking about crowdsourcing and scaling the experience so that patients can get the best care that's available to them. And then finally, in education here, we know that pretty much all the folks here are familiar with familiar with technology in the classroom, and that's only going to grow and enhance. We're going to start seeing augmented reality experiences in the classroom, virtual reality experiences in the classroom, and the ability to use this connectivity to create new types of education experiences. And so lastly, the thing I want you to keep in mind is it's your responsibility to be responsible in your application of technology. We've all, hopefully you've seen episodes of Black Mirror. You can see what happens when technology goes wrong. And so you're going to need to think about, how do you responsibly deploy your technology ideas to make sure that people's rights are maintained, and to make sure that the use of your technology doesn't put them at a disadvantage in maybe another area that you hadn't thought of before. And so definitely want to keep human rights in mind as you are working on your idea. And so I'll leave you with this. Like, Verizon is excited to partner with the Clinton Global Initiative on this, because we know that we can't wait for the future. We have to build it. And when I say we, it means us as a society, and you're part of that. And one of the reasons why we're so excited to work on this is because people like you, who are up and coming, you have the great ideas, you have the fresh perspectives. You're going to be the ones who are the next Mark Zuckerbergs, who are the next Steve Jobs, who are the next Jeff Bezos or Reed Hastings or Elon Musks, right? You're the ones who are going to have those new ideas that find new ways to use new technology to create things that were never there before. And so we're on the cusp of this new of what we were on 10 years ago, when people were creating new applications, they were creating new technologies that have come to define how we live our lives right now. Well, we're at that place again. We're at that precipice where we're about to go off this cliff. And it's people like you who are going to be at the forefront in creating new things. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure that y'all can get some copies of these slides and reference them. But hopefully this gave you an idea of some of the types of ways that technology is being applied and that it can and will be applied. And we're super excited to see what you come up with to use this technology to help people. So that's pretty much it. I know we're right there almost at time. If anybody has any questions, be happy to address those. Looks like Raphael says, in terms of beaming 5G, could be applied to low technology resource content. So this question is asking about the infrastructure required for beaming 5G. That is becoming more and more available. If you really want to get into the details of that, look up something called integrated access backhaul. I know it's a mouthful. Here, I'll put that in the chat here. Because that's a way that that's going to be a way that Raphael, your idea is going to be brought to life. It's already being experimented with. It's the idea that you can beam from one cell tower to another, and then use that as a way to daisy chain a 5G connection into a rural or an underserved area. So that's definitely something that's on the minds of the industry. And so you might submit your idea under the assumption that something like integrated access backhaul is going to be a reality. So yeah, to everyone, I will be sharing the slides. Someone asked about where to find information on an API for 5G. 5G doesn't require an API, but it does require a compatible device. I would say go ahead and as you're thinking about your concepts, move forward under the assumption that people are going to have, the people who have access to devices, will be 5G devices. And so I'm sure some of your submissions might be related to people who might not have access to types of hardware, and how do we provide necessary services and value to them. But if you are assuming that hardware exists for your users, assume that it's 5G hardware, and that'll really open up some options for you. Eddie asks what type of security implications exist in a 5G world. As we connect more things, obviously that's more points for security to be a concern. Unfortunately, 5G uses a lot of back-end infrastructure technologies, including things like network slicing, that provide pretty advanced security measures. And so as 5G enables things like advanced IoT, there will be advanced security measures in place to make sure that information stays safe. That's a good question, Eddie. And then how does the cost of 5G compare to current internet connectivity? Cost is a variable thing, Sean. It's always going to change. Right now, 5G for mobile devices doesn't cost anything extra. You do got to be on, for most carriers, you have to be on one of their top tier plans. And then as it's in the home, it's comparable with what people are paying for traditional cable connectivity. And then the question is, what will the cost be as that capability continues to scale upward? And we'll get there as an industry, but I imagine it'll be something that's still accessible for most people who would otherwise be paying for internet. And then our last one, Daniel was asking about the minimum necessary technology for 5G connectivity. Yeah, like I mentioned there, it requires a 5G modem and a 5G and a chip that takes advantage of that 5G modem. Qualcomm has been working on them. Intel has been working on them, and so those will continue to advance and to be available. They continue to get smaller in size. They continue to be integrated within one another. If you want to do a little bit of research on that, Daniel, go ahead and look up the Qualcomm X60 modem, and I'll put that in the chat. And if you take a look at the Qualcomm X60 versus the X55, then you'll see how that technology for achieving 5G connectivity is continuing to advance in real time. And even IoT sensors are still going to need some version of that modem in order to be connected. So thank you, everyone. I know we're a little past time. Thank you to the interpreters there. I know I was talking very fast. So thank you very much for providing that service. It's been really helpful. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Make sure that you get the slides, and don't forget to sign up for my office hours later this week. I'll be here to answer your questions.